Well, thank you very much. It's very nice to be here, having a great time. And thank you very much for doing the book, which I'm glad I plucked up the courage to send to you. And, well, I think I'll just read some. I'm going to read a few from a book called, well, a sequence in the book called Home James. But before that, I'm going to read a sort of introduction to the book, which is a poem called Orpheus Says. Kind rules as blind as words see far indeed, and state all traits agreed this form does not yet model change, blown want, as leaves assigned delusion or some version of the real contracted to require marginal eyes, while secret arguments sustain a way to feel about invisible force to pass for the sake of bay or nightshade, opening a breach in wonder, winding up to vanish or infuse a deadly Spanish war's image with news of homemade violent sequels shown on screens in minds each night, more largely bound to overlap cooler turns subtracted by exchange of reverse tradition, no less than a hybrid verse flower, more fully used there as its tension-trusting naked desire to read how margins hold the gate, or wait as vestige of some older wrong, the title lost in weed and rust. Something in the air. It might be my other image to cling in part that I owe later to greater claim with a blue ambition snare to seize a passage in words of space mirage. Rapt extremes bitten to speak so at the end of all the years, chances haunted by a nail inward to a list of anxious benefit and any rarer payee approaching. But listen. Times to his last well, straight to what posits all my signs behind shutters again. Invidious idea of limit shining at each natural hand as signified on this. Expect invasion in Rococo sacrifice proportions, all white glass and special drift, a treat observed at first as a mask image of desiring fresh earshot companions. Had I no answer? I said, echo sheds the real word, called intimating matter in debt, or believed it all just off egotism, nobly right since we squared being. Stake anyone in notice by one pounce in the deep to clear it up. A loose handle will change your view to show you how to name ground appeal tucked away alone. He walked to listen to distance shift in rising attitude until we bristled with dim elements by the spot of air known as recital. In short, my imagination snapped. Chance absence led scarce space apart in the air to travel by lure or menace, fitted to her credit, guilty of a mute encounter before lunch for her larger order. Her front pretext is glad to keep things in the tone to assuage contrived pantaloon fun, forced to meet a particular affect she ignores by seeing fears get out. Interest on my side hesitated by a snap of minutes to draw the world, weigh the trees to the useful class, talk from the house through a notion wound up to wax. A flag of light turned actual rupture, a scrap of art noted till I rest, watch stopped, need on the terrace exposed, conditions clutched in different silent work in language. Say taste dropped the last birds in the grey wood, pausing in prowl or stalking the approach as if a picture of a secret lantern before a sponge to keep clear now. Nothing doing. Yet lucidity was lost in avenues by the lapse of a margin to vibrate my last remark, so my mind at the end of an odd memory dropped field gestures up my deeper sleeve, and there was nothing in it. My own free straws moved in refuge with a shade quite yet as a change by law to form old presents, and drop a minute watching a long revolution lost in so chill a taste I wanted to recall the juncture of it. I asked why a grip results in proof in space, deepest matter over baffled scruples, full of refuge state in smoking shadow. I asked too much of the instinct, a formless touch in a wave of velvet gloom sacrifice. There was something of a time step before we could go by the smoke abyss dropped in paint, my right to private wonder, my step a trifle apart, equal to that in another ear for keeping room to turn away with no chance lost. It was stupefying. A desert displaced on the spot with a click and spread to a single wreath over rash flight without leakage was sure to serve bad work or strike back in her hand. Who needed this vast memory to speak? Twisting night can be against sacrifice by putting up a house of cards. It all exhaled a question. Tell me my tone when a whole hand of personal state seems still a reason for taking nothing to gain in a corner of your crisis. Recollect my state for more news from dead delusion, with instant speculation and candid words to act under in another place. A leap full of fools gone wrong, spectacle held in a fictive exchange by the inner liberty of feeling. Actual selection. Take 10 more to temper identification. Use the name of a house now the set penalties turn violent. So much left to say the part after minding more than saying words his mouth uttered, in a sense believing whatever words were spoken before the public. That strange motive just measured the moment, lost touch as words waiting for people with an object, a sort of justice to believe in as eyes fail to think for the mind in the dark blue time that grew as his hand for an instant imputed to the sharpest instant an expectation, watching. Wait and let it come. Tell me the place, darker and branching. Figure it out. How had he said such waves of recall, left that word quite as matter with a still reflection of these moments, their searching light, less attested and unexplained already. Impression, really. The trouble at the moment was not for the world's hurt, a dim drawing in instant thought like fear in what he'd suffer in his answer to the idea of form, but a second look out of the light of scrap earth we all love. Don't change this show of touch, this figure of dropped care, in the tone of words as various desires needed in order to arrange a common ground for each to risk. Time to get more time wound up, wanting to live half prepared to agree more and be sad about this growth of word trouble, renewed blankness as the question of the break in the form of pitch and sound, in moments that glow to apprehend no answer, to brush away in knowing advantage, as he would. Now, a poem from a sequence called A Space Based on Hearsay, a poem called Air Flitter. Binding light over the brow, thrown from the air, soft matter incapable of rhetoric, assuming status attention, with so true an eye to extract value out of our reach. Why mean to explain such posh, dismal magic as fictional wish? Fly over the wall, wearing a show made good in another language. Press a petal to rags to doubt about moving out of time as a scene offers to flutter the tongue and grove and flood the whole array with pastoral multiplex parody. Begin inset reason of shadow rakes to recognize the molded conflict he or she brings by the yard to music. It is not necessary to explain 4 words as a form left behind in a seclusion that works with silence or an Aeolian harp. A binding in their backyard containing the words called Art of Losing. It's still there in the sense of a glimmer impulse line cut back at the end, as burnt lists shake against the cold mind on implied stress, like a mouth blight still without rhythm. Stuck material points well up and go back as what follows from an email dream, first without shouting so much in bed. Time on concrete sift to brief air ruin. Notice a message as it stands for everyday models of relief in the mouth or body. Spice this object in abject damage, space to a yard of void sense, marked out in unhinged tenses, a way to consume that thought understood as a sight no longer missing an origin sensed about the wings of matter, as they fade over and over into air flitter. And I'll finish with a poem from another sequence called, what's it called? Imaginary Sky. The poem is called Lemon Soul. At first glance, the edge sign tempts to that code below we now find so fond of so little. Nothing about coffee to go out of date, except this danger of the edge of things, so to be overlooked. Tap fear entry beyond the scope of this key, absent at flowing time. Don't you see what I mean? Hooked, they can be simple, uncomfortable thoughts, or be hand in club twitching under a table set for 3 or more. Wood pigeon, trunk calls, charred wire, wood cut to fix up, and running a sort of ladder to betterment set with my own hands. Eat. Thank you.